Hey, Steve.
Hey, how you doing, Sam? Pretty good.
Good, Brian.
That's right.
So there's a hard copy there if you want a hard copy. Yep.
I did hear that recording is in process.
Yes.
It looks like Steve is frozen.
Yes. No, I mean, that was just his thinking mode.
So Steve, I just want to make sure you can hear me in council chambers. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, it is 6 o'clock, so I will call the meeting to order. Are there any adjustments for the first part of this meeting? I think that there is. Okay, so then we'll move on to item 3 that's on here. It's a grand list workshop. You have Barre, and if I pronounce your last name correctly, Schlesinger?
Perfect.
Okay, for property valuation and review. That's what that, we should be all set for the camera and the Zoom, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes.
welcome.
Okay. This is the first time I presented in this format, so bear with me, okay?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
excuse me, and I'm sorry, Barbara, but I'd like to just take a second to introduce, at least virtually, our new assessor, Steve Shellhammer, who is sitting in. Steve accepted our employment offer last week. And depending on his logistics, we'll be starting on or about October 1st. But I thought it would be a great opportunity for him to sit in on this session as a tutorial and get a chance to meet Barbara, at least virtually, and hopefully get off to a good start in his new position. So I just wanted to introduce him, and we'll have a more formal in-person introduction after he starts.
Excellent,
thank you, and welcome to the team.
yes. Hi, Steve, I look forward to working with you. Did I get this name right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, because we got Steve and Steve, okay, very good. Okay, so Carol had asked me a while ago if we could do something like this, and so here we are today. I've compiled information from various sources, so it might appear a little choppy, but I think with the presentation, it's going to flow okay for you. As you said, my name is Barb Schlesinger. I'm a district advisor. We are here to provide support, both administrative and assessment wise, for town listers and assessors. There's currently 7 of us in the state, and we work in our territories. And by having us, we're fortunate in Vermont to have us. We provide support that enhances both the reliability of assessments and the results of the standard and the greater standardization of assessment practices throughout the state. And we all know that because our schools are financed through property taxes, the more accurate, better information that goes in provides better results for the town and the state. We're all in this together. So that's what I have for that. The first thing we're going to go through is what is titled the Grand List Book, and it's an excerpt from the Lister's Handbook, starting on page 26. So I'm going to just read some of it, and some of it I'm going to skim over. So basically, the Grand List book is a complete, accurate, and consistent information on the properties in the town. It's the basis for collection of all property taxes in the state, which is over $1 billion annually. The information that is in the Grand List is used for many purposes, from determining the average value of a home in a given area to determining the amount of money each town will receive in reappraisal funds. There are certain statutory items that need to be in the Grand List. Among them are the complete name and mailing address of the owner, brief description of the property, the school property account number, which is the stand number, which is our basis for identifying every property in the state, down to, there it is on the map. Parcel size, homestead information, homestead value, house site value, resident status, highest and best use of the property, listed value of the real estate, taxable personal property, which you folks don't have anymore. You voted that out. Current use information, you have 3 parcels in current use. If a property would be taxable and has been voted exempt, that is in there. If it's stabilized, if it's taxable listed value must be shown along with the details of the contract or the exemption. So that means basically if something is on the Grand List and you have it exempt, there's got to be a reason for it. Mobile home descriptions, and the other one touch on valuation again. One thing I wanted to interject into this was what a parcel is. And by statute, it's defined as all contiguous land in the same ownership together with all improvements thereon. And statutorily, those are required to be listed together, not valued together, but listed together. And the court has offered guidance in the form of what must be considered when making valuation determination. And this is for the parcel. And if it was conveyed in one deed, the land's character and use. And if a parcel is acquired by separate deeds, that doesn't mean you have to list them as one combined unit. You can have 2 houses across from each other. The owner here bought the house in 2000 and he bought that house over there in 2010. They can be 2 separate things. They're listed as one for tax administration purposes for billing, but they can be valued and combined on the Grand List. So you're not losing that value of the second parcel just because it's in the same ownership. So that's what we got for that. Also on the Grand List, you have the properties that are exempt by statute, i.e. your churches, anything that's town owned and not used for business. Schools, libraries, big ones, yeah. Those are the major cemeteries. Those are the major ones that impact all towns. You can have local agreements, stabilization programs, something similar to your TIF district, those type of things. And you also have veterans that are the first $10,000 of veterans are absorbed statewide. If the town so chooses or city so chooses to vote more than that, then all the taxpayers are contributing for that extra money that needs to be paid for the education. There are, when the grand list is lodged with the town clerk, there are a multitude of reports that need to be included with that. 411s, signature pages. Let's see, certification that you've received it. Lister's oath goes in with the, when you receive it post grievance. All of these documents stay with the grand list forever. They're in the vault. When the assessor files the, or lodges first of all, it starts, well, let me back up. I'm sorry. My apologies. I'm getting ahead of myself, and that's later on in the discussion. So if we go now to real property highest best use codes, these are categories that all properties in the town or city are divided into, and it's the highest and best use of that property. So I'm just going to touch on these. These come into more into consideration when we get into your equalization study. We compare apples to apples. So you're not comparing a sales study with vacant land with a dwelling or a shop or something like that. So the dwelling codes that we have are residential, which is residential 1 and residential 2. And it's how a property would sell as and how it's constructed rather than how it's used. If somebody, was it second home owner, it wouldn't be considered, and you've got a regular house, it wouldn't be considered seasonal just because of its usage. It's considered residential because that's what the market would expect out of it. So we have residential 1, which is under 6 acres. Residential 2 is 6 acres and above. We have mobile homes that are unlanded. They're set up on the property, somebody else owns the property, either in a mobile home park or somebody else, maybe they're on a relative's land or something like that.
What if it was a camp?
Camps
Like a campground?
that you could have, do you mean like a campground, like?
So say like Eagle Mountain, which is in, Braintree.
Okay,
So there is a property of land, there's a number of mobile homes or travel trailers that would be on there, but
if the ownership is separate, then that would probably be considered commercial, because what you would be valuing the property owner would be for the land and the site improvements, i.e., the shower houses or where the travel trailers are hooked up to for the electric or something like that. The travel trailers themselves would be considered mobile homes, and they would be billed to the owner of record. And then we have seasonal properties. Those are truly camps, cottages, no central heat, usually no basement. People do live in them year round. We're seeing a lot more of like tiny homes and yurts and that type of thing. But they're not constructed. If you were to go down to the realtor today and say, I want to buy a 3-bedroom home, they're probably not going to be showing you that, because that's not what you're looking for. That would be more of a seasonal property. And those again go with the 6 acres of land under or 6 acres plus for our seasonal 2. Commercial properties are properties which highest and best uses in providing goods and services for sale. Those would include retail stores, malls, motels, hotels, filling stations, restaurants, office buildings, etc. It's not for manufacturing, which are for businesses that use raw materials. So they are considered commercial. Utility property is a little different from commercial because it's very specific. Electric type of properties produce electricity. Water would produce, you know, if you're municipal water or something like that, or somebody had private water. It's very specific, and Woodsell is that. The industrial codes, and you have that still in Barre, correct?
We should have the manufacturing for our sheds. Right?
Sheds.
Granite sheds.
Yeah, I would think. I have your 411,
Yeah.
or at least your equalization thing in here, and we'll take a look. So industrial is where commercial property in that raw materials are used to produce product rather than a product or service simply being sold. And those we have the industrial, UE and UO. So I said that a little,
We've got 60 in the industrial.
60 of them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite a few.
It is.
That's a lot of stuff being produced in town. Yeah, that's an awful lot, but. So we have the manufacturing plants that includes cheese making, microchip, I don't think we have that, sawmills, creameries, ice cream factories, etc. I got a little ahead of myself with utilities. There's the electric utilities there and the other utilities under industrial. Cable TV. Oh, okay, that's a little bit different. That's personal property. That's the only thing that would be considered personal property on your land list. Matter of administration. We have farms, and those are operating farms, not 5 acres of land. Vacant land. We have a category for woodland and one for miscellaneous. I believe all of yours are in miscellaneous, and they are. What you would expect in the city. And the other thing we track on the 411 is the status of the property owner. If they're a town resident, state resident, somebody who lives outside of the state of Vermont, or corporations, partnerships, and other entities. And that information is used in decision-making in legislature. It gives you a better idea of the demographics, and it also helps to facilitate with homestead declarations.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I was just looking at you have cable TV, cable television lines and fixtures.
Yep.
What if a person has a cable television line but doesn't have the cable hooked up in their house?
This is more for the company.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, if we look on your grand list, and it's not your grand list, it's your equalization study, but the information is used there. We
The
have,
very last page, Erica.
yes,
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, you'll see we've got personal property cable
Yep.
listed.
It's right here, down here, it's added on, so you have, I believe there's one.
Yeah.
In town,
Okay.
should be Spectrum, or
The building across from the office.
It's not the building, it's the cable.
the fiber optic lines.
Oh, gotcha.
That-
So
okay.
you're not counting who has like cable lines going to their house.
Nope,
All right,
nope,
sorry.
nope.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. Actually, if you did tax personal property, the cable modems and stuff would be the responsibility of the company.
Oh,
Okay, but we don't do that in Berry City because that's been voted out.
Thank you.
Sure. Sales reports, we're not gonna touch on. The 411 form, we are going to touch on. Didn't think to ask you, Carol, I'm sorry to grab you a recent one. But I do have a sample one in here, which is the 2 pages after. And it's a document that says using your 411 continued.
It's page 8 of the handout, if you look at the numbers in the bottom right corner.
It's there somewhere.
It is.
This is a lot of information. Please tell me if I'm going too fast or making it too confusing. So the listers are required, I keep saying listers, and I'm gonna be saying assessor, is required to provide an annual abstract of the grand list to the town clerk. The abstract is before grievance. And it's a summary of the information that's contained in the grant list. So say you had, 1,000 people that lived in houses under 6 acres. Each parcel, you would get a summary report that would look like this, and your R1 would have 600 parcels or 1,000 parcels. And then you would have the value total, both for the municipal and the education grand list, and it's also further divided in the center for homestead education and non-homestead education. And those categories are back. We have the R1, the R2, mobile home unlanded, mobile home landed, etc. They're going to follow through with many different functions that they're used for. If I'm missing something here. Fairview, I will just say this, and this has never happened that I know of with your town or with your city, but failure to file complete information in a timely manner may result in the withholding of state aid.
But you can ask for an extension,
Absolutely, you can.
and we've been down that road.
And that's fine. It's there for a reason. And it's not a big deal. It's okay. But the extension allows you to file it a little late. You still have to have make your August 15th submission, post grievance submission. Let's see. In addition to reporting the listed values and property counts for the different categories of taxable property, the form also requires detailed information on local agreements, veterans exemptions, and other properties exempt from taxation. If a property is exempt, the town must be able to explain why and include statutory citation. So up here is everything on the top of the 411 is everything that brings in value. They're all pluses. They're all summed in the middle as your total listed value. And down below is all the subtractions. So you have your veterans at 10,000, which I said earlier is the amount allowed everybody by statute. But in this situation, on this example, okay, there's 3 veterans. 10,000 is taken off, well, 30,000, 10 for each of the 3 is taken off both the municipal and the education grand list. But the additional 30,000 that this particular example town voted for their veterans only comes off the municipal list. So that means that the taxpayers as a whole are responsible for covering the additional voted exemption amount.
Right, so in that example, the veterans do not get a discount on the education portion.
No, they do.
They do,
Yeah, but it's the amount that is made up as part of the local agreement.
Yes,
That's
Okay.
part of.
That
what
is your
goes into
local,
the
yeah.
local agreement calculation.
absolutely it is. The cable was subtracted.
Before we move on from the veterans bank, just a quick question on that one.
Sure.
So just using this example, would the total amount that the taxpayers would be responsible for be the 120 plus 10 plus 20 plus 30?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. What you've got to realize is this is municipal.
Yeah.
This is education, so you don't add them across.
Right.
You think of them as individual columns.
Yep.
The 120 is the total amount in the municipal side, then the total amount on the education side is 30. So where the difference between those, the 90,000 is the amount that we would be responsible for making up through the local agreement.
Yep, and these two central columns that are marked education are just breakout between homestead and non-homestead.
Thank you.
And as we come down farther, we've got the cable, which is, in this town, it was voted exempt with personal property, so that is backed off. But they are still responsible for the education tax. There is nothing being backed off of that in the education column. There are some grandfathered, 231, 300 of grandfathered, which is probably fire departments. That's the only one that is statutorily exempt for voted contracts. Fire departments or rescues. The non-approved might be something like a local club or,
In our case, it's Good Samaritan Haven, which is
Okay.
voter approved for exemption, which means it's exempt from all taxes, but the city is responsible again for the education.
education taxes, yep. Because there, for some reason, it wasn't statutorily.
Right.
There, some component was missing. You probably, well, I'm not thinking you have much for farm stabilization in Barre City. So we don't really have anything there. Current use, you have 3 parcels. So that would be in the current use line there. If you had any special exemptions, is usually solar or subsidized housing. And the subsidized housing is a little bit different in that statute prescribes how that is assessed. And they also get up to 10% off of their assessment.
We have a few of those.
Yep, you do. And so that's how it all nets out to what your education and municipal grant list are down on the bottom. And there's a little bit more detail on submission of the 411. And that is sent into the state, both in August and in January for reconciliation. Make sense? Don't be afraid to say it doesn't. It took me years to figure that out. So next I wanted to touch a little bit on fair market value and the statutory definition of that. I'm gonna omit the top part because that refers to current use. And I'm gonna start 5th line down, 6th line.
So it's on page 10. On page 10.
I don't. I'm
With the
sorry.
statutory. is that what you're-
Yeah, this one here.
Yeah.
I had already made my notes, so I didn't take Carol's, she kindly put the numbers in there and got them in order. So the estimated fair market value of a property is the price that the property will bring in the market when offered for sale and purchased by another, taking into consideration all the elements of availability of the property, its use, both potential and prospective, any functional deficiencies, and all other elements such as age and condition that combine to give a property a market value. Those elements shall include the effect of any state or local law or regulation affecting the use of land, including 10 VSA Chapter 151, and any land capability plan established in furtherance or implementation thereof. That's like land trust land. Rules adopted by the State Board of Health and any local or regional zoning ordinances or development plans. In determining estimated fair market value, the sales price of a property in question is one element to consider, but is not solely determinative. And that last sentence was put in, oh, I'm going to say within the last 15 years, because that used to be a common grievance item. This is what I paid, so that's what it's worth. And that's not necessarily the case. It's a consideration, but not a determination.
So the appraisal value, the assessed value, and the fair market value could be two different.
Appraisal value would usually come from a bank, and that could be one value. Market value, normal. Right now, market value is quite an interesting thing. And assessed value could very well be a different thing. Your assessed values quite often come into place when you do a reappraisal. And if nothing has changed on the property, there's no reason to change it until you do another reappraisal. It's how the stability of the grand list is. We're going to get a little bit more into that right now. So I have two excerpt slides here. The goal of the grand list process is to determine fair market value as of April 1st of each year. However, without completing a reappraisal each year, that's not possible. In order to maintain equity from one property to another, listers use their existing system to value new and changed properties until such time as a reappraisal is completed. This results in a grand list that typically moves away from fair market value over time, which it does. And a little bit deeper dive into placing a value or fair market value on a property. There are three approaches to value that need to be considered in determining fair market value. We've got the cost approach, which is pretty much what you run with when you do a reappraisal. The tables are loaded into the computer assessing program. And everything that is done forward from that in the interim between that reappraisal and your next one is based on the tables that were put into place at your reappraisal. If 2x4s were, let me see, $10 for an 8-foot length at the time of your reappraisal, and now they're going for $50, you're still looking at everything at the $10 for the 8-foot length until you do a new reappraisal and reestablish those values. And that keeps things equitable. If somebody was looking at a house that hasn't changed since your last reappraisal and one that was just built today, the cost of materials are totally different, but it wouldn't be equitable. So the same eyes, the same treatment, the same cost tables are used until a new reappraisal. Next one is market approach. And that's the sales comparison approach, and that's used most widely for bank financing and fee appraisals. Those are the comps. That's what the market is. That's when you go off into the appraisal, which is different. Their timeline is different. They're looking usually at the last 6 months rather than a longer period. And they're using up-to-date costs that aren't in place in your grand list until you do a new reappraisal. So there is some variance there. And then the income approach. And that's typically used for income producing properties. It's also used for the subsidized housing. That's statutorily defined to value subsidized housing using income approach.
So is that something used for like parking lots because it's a different structure?
It could be, whatever your appraiser feels is the most accurate way to establish the value. That's what you would be doing. Actually, that comes into place a little bit with the valuation of cell towers. And the cell towers themselves is not what we normally are looking for when we do cell tower valuations. It is more the added value to a property that lease is bringing in. So if you have 10 acres of land here with no power or with no cell tower, it's say $100,000. If you have 10 acres of land over here with the cell tower that's bringing in $6,000 a month, the market is going to recognize that. So that amount of money is that income valuation is factored in with the cap rate to be applied to the land in addition to just the land. So it's an add-on because there is value being brought in. They bring in a lot of money. And it's something that is done statewide. So that's what we got for that. Okay. Are we all good? No questions? Okay. Okay, next I put in here the listers calendar, which is basically the dates for appeals. The assessment date is a little bit different. Assessment date is the grand list date, and that's pretty much statewide that all properties are valued as of April 1st. There's a couple of communities that look at them for January 1st, but the vast majority is on April 1st. Homesteads are normally timely if received by April 15th. Now the Barre City's population is more than 5,000, so we're going to work with the column on the right-hand side. The latest the abstract of individual lists can be lodged is June 24th. But as Carol said, extensions are available if needed. And that's okay. So the day that the abstract is lodged is also the day that the notices are sent. So June 24th again is the date for that. Grievances must be filed by 15 days after June 24th, so that would be July 9th, and grievances in writing, I grieve my property, however involved they want to get. Hearings end on the 22nd of July or until all grievances are heard that were received, the letters were received in a timely manner. So if you did were a reappraisal town and you had an inordinate amount of grievances, you would go until you heard them all.
So we heard about this recently with a couple of individuals who they wanted to appeal, but that 14 days seems short to them. Those 14 days are in statute, correct?
Yes, yes, they are. Yes, they are. And it's difficult. Some people have out of town addresses. Sometimes they're out of the country. and it is difficult. But statutorily, this is what it is. Okay, so, and then the results are mailed within 7 days of the close of the hearing. And again, we recommend with those results as well as the notice, the change of appraisal notices, that they be sent with the certificate of mailing. That way, you know, you can say, yes, it was mailed, sir. Good protection. The latest the grand list can be lodged is August 14th, and the 411 is due to the state on the 15th. Deadline for filing appeal to BCA is 14 days after date of mailing. Assessing department should always notify the town clerk the day they're mailing their results. It's on your calendar, you know. And then the BCA hearings begin 14 days after last date allowed for filing appeal notice. And I'm not gonna go down. You guys are good with that.
I will just say, while these are the outside dates, we tend to run a fair amount earlier than this because of the fact that our first tax payment by our charter is due August 15th. We have to have the bills out at least 30 days before that, which means the bills have to go out by July 15th. Which means, and it takes a week for our printer to get them printed and mailed, which means we have to have the tax rate by, you know, and we just keep moving things backwards. So we're probably 3 to 4 weeks earlier than this as a general rule.
That's a good thing. I don't think the only thing that would be an issue, and I doubt if it would be an issue, is the utilities are usually provided the beginning of May. So you'd want to have those values in place. But that's the only other thing. If homesteads come in later, you rebuild them. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's better to have it done earlier, I think, than to be pounding your head against the wall like.
I believe Steve Mackenzie had a question or a comment.
Yeah, Barbara, I just had a curiosity question as to the reason for the different submission deadlines for towns over or under 5,000. Is that to just lessen the impact on the department in receiving those?
No, because actually the date for us to receive them all is August 15th. These are local dates. So August 15th is when we need the 411 submission. The latest the grand list can be lodged is referring to lodging with the town clerk.
Okay, thank you.
So now we're going to look at grievances and appeals a little bit. And these are some suggestions. And as it says, the decisions you make as an assessor will be questioned. Taxpayers may appeal the assessed values on their properties, and they can appeal every year. There's no, they don't have to only appeal when a change has been made. They can appeal every year for however long they want to. Individuals and organizations may appeal your denial of a request for an exemption. The assessors are the ones that determine exemptions. They can appeal the figure you allocate for the homestead portion of a property. Also the house side. It's a part of the job. It's to be expected. And they should be handled in a professional and timely manner and as dispassionately as possible, which is pretty much a given. So Secretary of State has a very good handbook, the appeals handbook, and Carol, I know you're familiar with it. It's very, very helpful. And both for town folks and for people that are grieving. Everybody likes a parameter, what they should be doing, what they should be looking at, so it's not a bad thing to hand out to people. So these are just some suggestions, prior to grievance, to be open and forthcoming about the assessment process, be available to answer questions and listen to concerns, especially important during the townwide reappraisal. Some of our larger communities this year reappraised, and it was tough for them because big towns don't have to reappraise as often as little ones. There's numbers stay better because there's more of them, so it flattens out any peaks. So quite often a reappraisal firm will do informational public hearings prior to and explain the methodologies they use, answer any questions the public might have, and is very helpful.
That's actually in the contract with the assessing company that's going to be doing our reappraisal starting next year.
Excellent. It's very helpful. It really is. Very frantic time, but it's you know, we're here for the people. We're civil servants, right? Change of appraisal notices, they must be sent the same day the abstract of individual list is lodged with the town clerk. They must be sent to each property owner whose value has changed since the previous assessment, i.e. the year before. This includes changes in homestead and house site values, or change in allocation of use value for properties enrolled in current use. The notice must include information on how to grieve, the deadline for filing a written grievance, and they are posted in 5 public places. Back to, they should be sent either certificate of mailing, certified mail, or registered mail. Certificate of mailing is less expensive. And again, if the question arises, you can prove that it was sent in a timely manner. The hearings themselves, the assessor should be prepared to briefly state how the value is determined. And pardon this, but it's geared towards listers. They should listen carefully and politely to the taxpayer's payment or statements, allow sufficient time for the taxpayer to make his or her case, answer all questions they can. If the assessor determines a site inspection is necessary, make an appointment to visit, and don't make your decision during the hearing. Thank the property owner for his time and attention, and the decision be made afterwards. The result of grievance notices must be mailed to the taxpayer within 7 days of the close of grievance hearings. It should include the decision of the assessor with respect to the grievance and instructions on appeals to the Board of Civil Authority from this decision. The network software automatically puts that into the notice of what to be done. Excuse me.
Assuming the VT5 will do the same
Yes.
thing, yeah.
Yes.
The new statewide
Brandless software. Yep. Yes, we work very hard to have that be a part of the software. Appeals to the Board of Civil Authority. Property owners have 14 days from the date of mailing of the resultant grievance in order to appeal to the Board of Civil Authority. The town city clerk will notify the listers if any such appeals are received and of the date and time of the hearing. Because the listers / assessor will be presenting their defense at the BCA. Appeals beyond the Board of Civil Authority, taxpayers can either go to the Superior Court or the state hearing officer. And it usually depends, property owners will go to the state hearing officer. Quite often, any appeals on exemption or something along that matter will go to the court.
I'm assuming it's pretty rare that appeals go beyond that civil authority level.
In my 13 years, we've probably had, I don't think we've had a dozen, you know, maybe 10. Yeah, it's not that many.
I've seen in my experience in a much smaller municipality, I've probably had 10 to a dozen in same amount of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't that frequent. Usually it's for something where the stakes are.
And I would say that ours have been pretty evenly split
Okay.
between appeals to PBR or appeals to the court.
Okay,
But yes, you look at the ones that have gone to the court and they've been, you know, studio place arts,
Mhm.
because we had said they should be fully taxable and they said they should be fully exempt, and ended up in court to deal with the exemption. And, you know, so they were bigger
Yep.
issues of law than,
Yeah.
than just issues of value.
Yes.
So.
yes, I had one for a former racetrack, utility, small hydro plant, and one with, before the statute was made, where price is just a consideration and it's not the sole determinant of fair market value. So that was a few years ago, but that was an interesting one. And he won. So, and then the statute got changed.
Usually what does it?
Something like that, yeah. And then I put in here the statute for errors and omissions. They happen. They happen all the time. We're human. So this one reads, and this is 32 VSA 4261. When real or personal property is omitted from the Graham list by mistake or an obvious error is found, the lister/assessor, with the approval of the select board, on or before December 31st, may supply such omissions or correct such errors and make a certificate thereon of the fact. Provided, however, the lister/assessor may make the correction resulting from the filing or rescission of a homestead declaration without approval of the select board. So homestead filings do not need approval. Valuation changes do, and current use is statutory. You don't have to worry about that so much, but sometimes current use is a little late in getting everything to the towns because of the process. So it isn't that the listers made an error, it's the department.
But it's to correct any of those errors that happened between the grand list being lodged and the December 31st date.
Yep, so if the lodge with the town clerk, which is the result of grievance letters are going in the mail, they're lodging with you, Carol, that date. So anything, as you say, in between that date and December 31st, somebody's out driving the road and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, where did that house come from? And that's how that would work. The last thing I have here is the equalization study, and I'm sorry, what time is it?
We have about 8 more minutes.
Oh, my goodness, okay, I'll talk quick. The purpose of the equalization study, which we do annually, is because Vermont raises education funds through several tax sources, including state education property tax. The state education property tax is based on each municipality's grand list of property. The Division of Property Valuation and Review conducts an annual equalization study of all municipal grand lists. The primary purpose is to assess how close the properties on the grand list are compared to fair market value. The reference to equalization stems from the fact that most municipalities' grand lists are not at 100% of fair market value in any given year. If the grand lists were always at 100% of fair market value, there'd be no reason to do this. The CLA is used to equalize the education property tax rates throughout the state based on where your sales are and compared to your listed value. The commissioner is required to determine the equalized education property tax grand list and coefficient of dispersion for each municipality in the state. The COD helps to ensure that property valuations within a municipality are equitable. The results of the study are used to do the following: determine the education property tax rates, determine whether a municipality must undergo a reappraisal, and determine the taxes municipalities pay to the county. And what it does, the study compares appraised, listed / assessed values to action market sales. And it's over a 3-year period that this is done, rolling 3-year. By comparing listed values to sales, PVR, which is my department, determines the level of assessment for the town relative to 100%. The overall level of assessment is known as the common level of appraisal. And this is, back to this, is the result of the study. And there's a lot of statistics that go on in this. But if you look over, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row or 5th column over from the right-hand side is where your CLA is calculated from, again, back to the categories, R1, R2, R3, or I'm sorry, R1, R2, mobile homes unlanded, mobile homes landed, etc. And the COD is the second column from the right. And your values on the whole are good until you get down to land, which is usually the first one to go. It's the hardest one to determine. State requires a reappraisal when your CLA is below 85% or above 115, and when your COD is 20 or above.
So we're doing well as far as planning on doing our reappraisal starting next year.
Absolutely.
However, that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a need, because
Absolutely.
we definitely have some inequities.
Yep.
So,
Within neighborhoods.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I personally think that they should be done every 8 at the most 10 years. Your data goes bad, it goes stale.
Well,
You
and by
were
the
in a
time,
house.
by the time we finish ours in 2024, it will have been 22 years since the last
Yeah.
citywide that included full inspections.
Yeah.
Which was in 02.
And we all know that probably half of those homes have, the bathrooms have been remodeled, the kitchens have been remodeled. You can't capture that without doing the reappraisal.
Right.
And it's the right thing to do.
And it's one of the reasons why the state pays us.
That's right, we forgot that important part, that $8.50, you receive $8.50 per parcel per year for Grandlands maintenance. You receive another $1 per parcel per year for help with the equalization study. Because this involves taking all the sales for the year and vetting them to see if they're valid or invalid. The better job you do there, the better your data is, the better your results.
So since we only do have 2 minutes left, are there any like burning questions, anything that was not covered that anybody wanted to ask?
So you don't have to do it every so often. There's no like set schedule. There's not like you must reevaluate within 10 years. It's just driven by the city's.
So those numbers are what usually drive it, so that common level of assessment, if it's, or appraisal.
Yeah.
So in Barre Town, I believe the number was down at 80%.
Yeah, they were down.
They were down a little bit more, yeah, yep.
So it's more, if the last few years when we've had BCA hearings and we've had people appeal, you have seen the inequities in a neighborhood, say, where all the, if you look at like Country Way, where all the houses are very similar, and so they all started with a similar assessment, but they have over the years been changed. If they sell and they're selling for a lot more than what they originally were assessed for, and that has had an impact on the value that has been placed on them. And so now you've got houses next door to each other that are virtually the same with huge disparity between their values. And so just finding a way to smooth that out.
Yep.
This is the way to do it.
Yep. And also, when you're doing a reappraisal, you're looking through the lens of the whole town. So maybe you have a neighborhood over here that's very similar to a neighborhood over here, but they aren't assessed value-wise. And it brings everybody back to the same playing field.
Well, Barbara, we do have the next meeting that's
Yep.
coming up, so I just want to say thank you for coming in.
You're very welcome.
If any of us have any questions, we can just make sure to follow up from Carol to you.
Yeah. Or if you want to reach me directly, but through Carol is more than fine.
I will say Barbara has been a tremendous help over the last 8-9 months, as we have, been working through the changes in our staffing and offices, and she's been a wealth of knowledge and support, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that.
And the last question is really, when does the software change happen?
Well, it's beginning now, but it's going to be a couple of years before it's completely rolled out.
The first stage is set to probably go into effect in September, and that's the integration of GIS with the brand list, which opens so many doors. When you can click on a parcel, it brings up the map and the dimensions of the property, and it's a wonderful thing. Enabling that vision, that ability to see what you're looking at, adds a lot. So that's the first phase. The second phase, which will be January, is the transitioning over the sales study. And in each one, as you say, until I believe we will be fully done 2024.
Same time we're
Yep,
finishing up our,
Yeah. that'd be good.
Good time, yeah.
same time I retire.
Everything comes back to your retirement. The way it should.
Well, that has a nice ring.
I
You know?
take that date arbitrarily.
Council, then I just look for a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
So move.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay, that's an aye, not a nay. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you. guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, council, so since it is 7:03, I will call our regular council meeting into session. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to put Carrie Menard back on the agenda. She was She had a letter to be a part of the homeless task force. I took her off immaturely last week, thinking that she could not be on the task force being a resident of Montclair. But it was, as we talked about last week, she could still be part of the Barre task force being a resident of Montclair. So I'd like to add her to the agenda, please. And she is here tonight.
Thank you. And I'm going to note something similar for the homelessness task force for Rosemary April. She did submit an application on time, although she had noted today that she just really received the notice today. So we probably won't be able to act on that because she will not have it.
And similarly, third time's the charm, I would like to add Kelly Carey to the agenda for the homelessness task force. I had spoken with her at the All of the Berry meeting. I've spoken with her a couple times since. She was not able to get an email in due to some technical issues, but I've spoken with her on the phone a few times, and she is here tonight as well.
Okay. Any other adjustments for the agenda? Steve, did you have anything else?
No adjustments. No adjustments.
Thank you. So then moving forward, I look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
There must be a delay. Thank you very much. And then I'll turn this over to the city clerk and treasurer, Kara.
Just a couple quick things. Continuing reminder that the first quarter property tax payments are due by September 15, which is next Wednesday. So one more time, I'll be able to remind you at next week's meeting. So stop on by. We've been getting a lot of calls from people. Can we come into the office now? Yes, you can come into the office to make payments. We are asking that people wear masks in the building, but come on in. Water and sewer bills were mailed out last week and they are due by the end of September. So come on in for that too. And then lastly, we did receive approximately half of the ARPA county money that the city of Barre will be getting. A little over $828,000. And so we're investing that as we have done with the municipal ARPA money until such time as we determine what we're going to do with it and start needing the funds. So that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for the clerk or the treasurer? Hearing and seeing none. Anything for liquor control?
No.
And then the city manager's report, Steve?
I only have one verbal addendum. Notices have been placed on the website and in the Times Argus and will be in the World for the semi-annual water main flushing cycle, which will start the night of Sunday, the 19th, and continue through Thursday, the 23rd. So just a heads up. The flushing cycles have become smoother and smoother. Last spring, I think we had less than half a dozen inquiries. I'm not even sure if they were complaints. And we're hopeful for the same level of success this fall. So just a heads up, we're trying to give notice to everybody. And there's a blurb on the website if people have questions.
Councilor Booton?
Yeah, and just a reminder about that, when you see the water and it's discolored, it's not that it's unsafe. It's just the sediment that's brought up. It's not like you're gonna get sick from it. It's just sediment that's down there, in case anybody sees it. Because you get a lot of questions about that, whether or not the water needs to be boiled, and you just need to let it run until it becomes clear again. Right, Steve?
Correct.
Any other questions for the city manager or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Moving on to visitors and communications. Does anybody have an item that is not on the agenda for addressing? Okay, moving right along. So under old business,
Is that
It's
from
still,
before?
it's just.
yeah, he did put his hand down. Under old business, we do have AA. These are additional appointments for consideration for the manager search committee. And the first one on the list is Paul Cook. Do we have Paul here tonight?
Not virtually.
Paul did try the last time, and I'm going to still note that.
Tried very hard.
He did try. So next on the list is Sue Hickey. Sue.
Thank you. Thanks. Hello, everyone.
So just introduce yourself to council and
Sure.
let us know why you're interested in the manager search.
Glad to do that. Thanks. First, Steve, I think I see you up there.
Yes,
Thank you for your service. It seems like I've worked with you for some time and I've never had a chance to just say, you've done a great job. So thank you.
well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Welcome. So I'm interested in serving on the committee because it's the key leadership position for the city of Barre. And I view this position as being the front for what we can become as a community. And as I reflect back on the different things that I've done here in the community, I think that some of the experiences could be very helpful on the committee. I've worked on Main Street as the executive director of Studio Place Arts since 2000. So I'm very familiar with all of the flood issues, all of the traffic issues, crime issues, all of the issues that fall on the lap of the manager at some point. I've also lived here in Barre City for 21 years. And I moved here wanting to create a better community. And so I still have that instinct as I come forward and talk about my hopes to see a really fine person identified and selected for the city manager job. It's truly a pivotal role in our community. It's kind of a rare juggling act where you're the business person, you're the politician, you're the community outreach specialist, you're the person who never really has a vacation. And I actually have a memory. I grew up in a dairy community in Michigan. And I remember I foolishly said something about going on a vacation to some of my farm friends. And they asked me what that was. And that's really that's what I think of when I think of the role that Steve has just finished. Well, not finished, but is finishing up here for the city. That at the very least, we need to find somebody who can position the city of Barre for our splendid future. And we also want to give Steve a chance to have a true retirement. So I have been involved in searches. I worked in Washington, D.C. for some major national organizations. I've worked on junior level, mid-level management, and also senior CEO search committees. I've worked on local searches, national searches. I have a lot of experience that I think could be very useful to the committee. And so I thought I should toss my hat in and say that I'm ready to share who I am and some of the perspectives that I think could be useful in this search. So I did write a letter of interest way back, I think it was July 21st. And I sent this to Rick Taft. I'll just pass this along in the event that the letter somehow got lost in the transom. And if you have questions about my background or perspectives, I'd love to respond to those right now.
Sure. So council, does anybody have any questions?
Okay.
So the one question that I ask of everyone is, you are aware of the commitment and you're able to meet that commitment?
I, like many people, would not have written the letter in the first place if I didn't have complete awareness. Yes.
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Okay.
And just to note at the beginning here, we will most likely go into executive session this evening. We'll be able to review the applicants from today and with that we reviewed last week in order for the appointments.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Also moving on, we have AA3, which is Michael Sitton. Come on up, Michael.
thank you for having me here.
So it's the same two questions, really.
Yeah.
Just introduce us and why you're
Yeah.
interested in it.
So my partner and I bought a house in Barre City almost exactly 4 years ago with our intention to be here in retirement. I was still working at the time in a higher education job in northern New York, but so I've been sort of in transition here, but have been here full time, well, since the start of the COVID pandemic, because the end of my work was remote, and then I retired completely from my job in July of 2020. Obviously have an interest in Barre. We thought a lot about where we wanted to be and liked many things about Barre and felt strongly about the community. So feel like we have an investment in being here and want to contribute what we can to make this a better place or a strong place. I understand the importance of having a strong and capable person in this really key position, as we just heard. And this seemed like a good opportunity for me to sort of begin to engage with the city and contribute in some way to the community. I have also been involved in many searches in my academic administrative work, obviously faculty, but many other kinds of searches as well. So although this is a different set of requirements, very familiar with hiring processes, and I have led sort of high-level searches and reviewed candidates, so I have a lot of experience in that area. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm interested. And I did take a look at the commitment, and I'm certainly able to do that.
Great, thank you. Council, any questions?
Where did you buy your house?
We're on Courier Street,
Oh, nice.
and worked out very well. We really like it there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think I just laid out the process, so you're aware of that too. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. 8A4 of Elizabeth Peoples. Right. Do not see Elizabeth. Okay. Moving on to 8A subletter 5, Maria Conti Riley.
Not very sure.
So then council will move on then to the old business 8B, which is appointments to the homelessness task force. Similar process, but just the different body. Brooke Pouliot.
Good evening.
Hi Brooke, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
So same questions as homelessness task force. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in the.
Okay, so I'm the so even though I do not live in Barre, I spend an incredible amount of time in Barre since this is where I work. I'm the community outreach specialist for Barre City Police Department. And a big part of my position is working with the homelessness population and trying to assist them in attending meetings. So, I mean, because I wrote it down quickly, I attend about 4 meetings a week discussing like the homelessness situation in Barre. And I think I just got back from vacation, so don't quote me on this, but I think before I left, I think there was like 7 people that were identified in Barre. And I just feel like homelessness should, everyone should have an opportunity to feel safe and have a home, and to like, because that will, then once they have that little stability, they'll have like an address, so then maybe they can get their IDs or get a job, or like, it's just such a core beginning of like improving people's lives. So any questions?
So council, any questions? And the only questions I have are, time commitments and you're able to meet those for the committee?
I do not, but I'm sure I'll be able to.
Okay, so, Councilor Wazak, I want to speak to that a little bit more. I don't know if the actually chosen yet for when you and Erica would want to.
Yeah, we haven't really discussed that.
I don't think we've settled on, we were thinking this month. But,
Yes.
well, we were thinking having our first meeting, first week in October, the latest. We've been working with Rick to identify a spot to actually have the meeting.
Okay. So, Brooke, just note that if that work better than others, it sounds like for this group, there will be a coordination between those that are appointed to make sure that we have the best time for everybody to meet.
Oh, of course. And just because of my job and nature, my schedule is very flexible. So if they're early evening or whatever, I can attend. Yeah, I'm very flexible. So that would be fabulous.
Okay. So council, any last questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Brooke. As the manager search, going to make the appointments most likely tonight.
Thank you and have a good night.
The council, moving on to 8B, letter 2. This is Teddy Wazak.
Should I, would you like?
I'll run down.
All right, so Teddy Wazak, Ward 2 City Councilor, live on Merchant Street. With the ending of the broad GA motel program from the state, which basically eradicated homelessness in Vermont over the past year and a half, in conversation with Councilor Reel, we thought it would be good to convene a group of folks to look at the homelessness situation in Barre and see what the municipality could do and what tools the municipality has available to assist those who are currently experiencing homelessness. And I do know the commitments,
Okay.
and I will make them.
Thank you. So, councilors, any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilor Reel.
Councilor Erica Vale, Ward 3, City Council, Bassett Street, Barre. Over COVID, I met some wonderful folks who were living in hotel housing and became friends and learned more about the housing situation in Barre, Berlin, Montpelier, and have recently taken a job where I work with folks that are unhoused and have in the past 2 years, I've worked in Montpelier on the Montpelier homelessness task force, and thought that with the homelessness that is happening in Montpelier, it should be expanded into working with folks in Barre, knowing that there is many folks that are unhoused in Barre and encampments, and we need to do something before snow flies, knowing that there is going to be a lot of folks unhoused this winter. I do know the time commitments. I am very, very passionate about this subject. Thank you.
And you know the commitments?
I do know the time commitments.
Okay. So, council, any questions?
Another question is Tammy also going to speak this evening? Is that okay?
Yeah, we have a couple other names that are on. Okay, thank you. So, council, as noted at the beginning of the meeting, we have Tammy Menard. So, welcome, Tammy. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this.
I'm interested in this position because I've been working with the homeless steadily, voluntarily for the last 8 months. I was homeless myself until recently, which I have gotten a permit in Vermont, Montpelier. So I am now housed, but I'm still working with the people trying to get their paperwork and stuff in that they need for housing. I talk with them daily. So I know what they're going through. Haven't experienced it as well. So I have a good point of view from both perspectives, as being housed and as being homeless. And I would like to continue, I'm passionate about doing this. I've been volunteering my time, 30+ hours a week, to work with these people, and I would love to be on this committee. And I do know the time frame, and I am committed to it.
Council, any questions? Okay, thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
As noted, Rosemary April has inquired on her application. She is not on the list. She wasn't notified until today that we were having these here. So the next person is Kelly Carey.
Yeah, well, actually, it's Carrie first.
Carey,
Yeah, remember, yours first. Hello, let me situate it here. My name is Carrie Kelly. I too am also was homeless actually for a while in Montpelier. I have a little insight as to everything that's wrong about other homeless task force over in Montpelier and their sort of failure to reach out to the people, as well as how the police play or don't play a role in helping people find services, whether it be through mental health or housing, or being homeless due to leaving incarceration, things like that. After going to these meetings, I'm hoping to build a little bit of a bridge to some of these other groups that help people find housing where the police are sort of withholding information. Also, I am a domestic violence victim. We are out there, we are homeless. We do need connections. I'm also disabled due to domestic violence and police brutality. So I kind of feel for all sides of the spectrum. I'm very passionate. I do have a lot of time right now. Until I'm housed and looking for housing, I enjoy reading policy. I'm pretty familiar with all the GA, what is okay for housing, what's not, the 84-day limit coming up, things like that. I'm very interested in anything political. I read the papers and I check everything. I do walk around too and try to check out who's around. I'm more familiar with Montpelier, but learning this area as well, and I plan to reside in Barre as well. So there's many gaps that I think the task force can fill. And since I have the available time, I'd say a passion and vested interest, I'm more than willing to advocate for anyone who needs application. Other than that,
And you're aware of the time commitment?
I'm on 100% due to some technical issues I had, but right now I'm pretty available. I do work with the People's Worker Center. It's only, a few times a week. We have marches every so often, but we do cover a lot of these issues. Homelessness is one of them. Freedom from incarceration is one of them. Education, which is another big perk. I've been speaking a lot with like Capstone, trying to just get people connected even at the peer recently with like basic needs. I just think all these things would be great connections, and also like clothing is a big issue right now, things like that. Just all these little things that I can fill in, whereas other people aren't available right now. Any other questions?
Any questions, Council? Thank you.
I'd like to speak to.
To the appointments?
No,
So what I'll do, if it's not to the appointments, are you talking about the homelessness task force?
no.
So what I can do is, once we're through the regular agenda, when we get to roundtable, if it's for something that's not on the agenda, is it okay if I come back to that?
Fine, thank you.
We're almost there too. So council, then we'll move on to item 9A. This is under new business. This is approved request to suspend American flag across Main Street. We have Brian Judd.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you. Can you hear us?
Thank you. So I met with a structural engineer, and I just got this report back from him at 5:30. I emailed everybody on the council, the mayor, city manager, and city clerk. And his results, the most important part of the letter is the next to last paragraph. And so there's some options that we can do.
what the goal was to fly the 20-foot by 30-foot flag that I have in my possession. The flag has been mended, and so it's ready to fly. And unfortunately, the structure itself, it's a small fix, but the structure, the way it's laid out right now, is not ready to have this flag on there. So what he suggested is that because this is all based on physics, the size of the flag, the strength of the cable, the weight of the flag, et cetera, that the way it stands right now is that the cable could easily carry a 12 by 18 foot flag. And so what I would like to see happen, if with the city council's okay, is I want to go ahead and have a chance to exhaust every opportunity to get this 20 by 30 foot flag flying. I need to, like I said, I just got this report at 5:30 this afternoon, and to contact the construction company tomorrow to see if they're still available to do this work. And if so, to then get the permits and then get the work done and then raise the flag on Friday morning, the 10th. I've contacted the deputy chief of the fire department, left a message with him, basically saying what I just said to you. And so after this meeting, what I'm going to do, I have a backup plan as of right now, a 9 by 12 foot flag, and I need to check with a friend this meeting to see if that's still available. If it seems feasible to get this work done, the permits, et cetera, by the 10th, the 11th, morning of the 11th at the latest. And also, if that is not available, to their flag store on the Barre Montpelier Road to see if they have a flag for sale there that's 12 by 18 feet. And so what I'd like to do is have until the end of business tomorrow at 4 p.m. to report back to the council and let them know what I've been able to find out, and give you a final report at that point by 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon of which of these options I want to follow through with. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Judd, just so you're aware, we don't have a meeting tomorrow for this to be addressed with. What I'm going to do is, Steve, have you had a chance to look at the email that was sent out this afternoon?
Yes, I have. I'm comfortable, if the council is, that we can deal with this administratively as long as Brian is able to meet those requirements. I don't think that what Chris Temple has reported is insurmountable. It's a matter of whether the contractor Brian is working with can be available. I'm comfortable we can deal with it administratively.
Council, since you don't have the letter in front of you.
Councilor Blumen also has his hand raised.
Sure. Michael, hold on 1 second. Since it was noted for the second to last paragraph, not everybody has a laptop in front of them. It says, based upon the results of our analysis, there are a couple of options. The easiest option at this time is to fly a 12 by 18 flag rather than the proposed 20 by 30 flag. A 12 by 18 flag will induce maximum loads approximately equal to the design capacity of the cable and would be acceptable. To fly the 20 by 30 flag, we would recommend replacing the reinforcing the existing 2-inch diameter washers in the 114 North Main Street building with a new 4 by 4 by 1/4 inch steel plate washer. Please note, to replace the washer, it is likely that the cable will need to be slightly detensioned and the retensioning once the washer is in place. The sag of the cable should remain approximately 2 feet in the unloaded condition prior to the installation of the flag. So this is a letter that was sent from the civil and structural engineers at DeWolf Engineering Associates, and it has a stamp of approval that has a state of Vermont stamp that has that. So I just wanted to make sure that you had at least heard that since it did come this afternoon. Councilor Booton, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think that I would like to have a motion just to have this dealt with administratively, like Steve had said. And I make a motion that we approve the hanging of the flag, contingent upon manager approval, which he will go through the whole process of what is allowed and what is not based on the size and structural integrity thereof.
Is there a second? I do not hear a second to the motion. So Steve, I know.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Councilor Shanto.
Yes. Absolutely.
Just asking a question about procedure. Since there is not a second to the motion, is this open for conversation?
We can still have some notes as it's on the agenda.
Pardon me?
If it's on the agenda, if there's anything else you want to add, but there's no action to take at this moment.
Okay, there is stuff that I would like to add. I'm very uncomfortable with this whole proposal. I drove through Barre this last week. I've clearly been driving through Barre. I live in Barre. And the city has already put up flags along Main Street, the whole length of the city. It's on lamp posts. It's very tastefully done as far as I'm concerned. I think it sends a very loud message, even though the flags on the posts are relatively small. But I think they're very clear in their message. For me, I was trying to visualize what a big flag at the other end would look like. I personally find it completely intimidating.
Yeah.
It just sends a message that I'm uncomfortable with. I'm also concerned about how the request has come to the council. The paperwork that Steve Davis says that no person can hang a banner without permission or approval of the council. My understanding from Mr. Judd's presentation last week was that he got agreement from people who ran stores, and he talked with the city manager about it, who in effect said that the council probably would agree. I don't think we had a conversation about it on council as to what people really thought. I'm concerned about who's going to pay for the engineering costs. I'm concerned about insurance, and if there has to be any insurance adjustment because of this, who's going to pay for it? Clearly, since it's being looked at by an engineer and the work would be done by somebody who I guess assume would be competent to do it, then that probably precludes the worry about what happens if the flag breaks loose and who's responsible. And a few other things that I feel really strongly about. I feel like I've been blindsided by the request. I think it's been proposed at a very late date and quickly put together, and just, I also have a feeling, easy feeling about the intent. Because over the past few years, we've all seen, or at least I've seen and believe, that there have been some pretty ugly connotations that have been used to promote causes that are contrary to what I believe our national flag stands for. And I think the flag has been used for some of those connotations.
Yeah.
That makes me really worried. And I also feel like I'm being held hostage to a certain extent. That if I vote against the flag being hung, that might be interpreted as my being anti-American. And if I vote for it,
I think I'm supporting the possibility of some negative points of view and also opening the door to people making proposals don't come directly to council first. And on top of that, the whole goal of this is to honor the losses of 9/11. That's been a loss of American innocence to a huge extent. We never felt like we've been attacked on our own land or piece of. And we also have a loss of lives both at that time and subsequently in light of ongoing wars. I would like to find another way to honor 9/11 than to make it about a huge flag in the middle of the road.
Yeah. All set.
Well, thank you.
So are there any other comments? I know there's some questions that were in there. For example, the engineering costs and the insurance. Brian or Steve, I don't know if that was included as part of the packet. I don't think I saw it in there.
Yeah, so this was not, I wouldn't consider this hastily put together. This is a fourth week that I've been working on this. And I needed to contact the owners of the building to make sure that they were okay with this happening first. And it was hard to track these people down, but I got there okay. Then I needed to find where the flag was, and I found the flag, and it needed to be repaired. So I paid for the repair of the flag. I'm also paying for the cost of the structural engineer. If there's going to be some construction done, there's going to be there will have to be a permit with the city and the state, and I will be paying for both of those. If there's a permit that needs, to be paid for to actually raise the flag, I will be paying for that as well. And so this is not a new idea. I'm reviving something that came about 20 years ago or 19 years ago. And this flag was put up to commemorate what had happened that day. And so for quite a while, it hasn't flown. And somebody brought it to my attention. And so I started the process, one step at a time, to get to a place where I am right now. And that's where I am right now. And I've taken these steps in order. I think the order that I should have taken them in. And so this was brought up last week, and I don't recall anybody stating anything against this idea of going forward. I don't know if the council was here last week or not, but I don't recall anybody voicing any opinion against going forward. And again, that's why I'm here tonight, because there was nothing, no one said anything idea. And so I think I've followed everything in the order I should have. I've let everybody know the progress that I've been making. I've stayed in touch with the city manager, letting him know each thing I did. I got in touch with I came before the city council last week at, I think, the proper time that I should have. And so I really want to go forward with this, and any costs that are going to be, the only question and you bring up a good point. I don't know what they did 20 years ago or 19 years ago in regard to liability and insurance, but everything else I'm going to be taking care of the cost.
So Steve, was there anything else that you needed to comment on?
Yeah, Councilor Shamble brings up a good point about the insurance. I don't know. It would have to check with the city's carrier whether the city's policy would cover that. I'm not sure that it would, or whether Brian would have to arrange for insurance coverage on his own. I mean, I can reach out to Passive tomorrow, and I think they'll give me an answer pretty quickly, but I don't dare predict what their answer would be.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Goodman?
So I mean, based on the lack of a second, that I don't know if there's any point of even asking about insurance, because apparently we're not going to put the flag up. Am I reading the room incorrectly?
Absent a second and absent a positive motion, the proposal stops here this evening.
Correct. So is there any other motions to be made?
I mean, I can't make the same motion again, can I?
You cannot make the same motion. If you want to change it in a little bit, you could, but I'm looking.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that I can do to change it that would make it palatable. So, I mean, is there something that I could do to make it palatable? No, the answer is no.
Hold on, Councilor Shondell.
For me, no.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so the counselor that is opposing this, were you here at last week's city council meeting?
I was, sir.
You were. And did you feel the same way last Tuesday?
Before we get into the feelings about this, it wasn't on the agenda as a warrant item last week. We were looking for more information, which we were provided today. So I don't think any of us were in a position to make a decision one way or the other last week.
No, I wasn't asking about a decision. I was asking about a feeling, because I pretty much described pretty much everything that I said tonight last week for the most part. And so I'm just curious if the council person, felt this same way about this last week. And if so, why the council person didn't go ahead and put forth this same opinion or something to this same opinion, because this could have died last Tuesday.
So,
I would just like to address this, Mr. Judd. This council person is Mel Chumbell. That's one. I'm not just this council person. The other thing is that it was made clear last week, just as Mayor Herring just told you, that that wasn't the time for the conversation, for the decision. That people heard what you had presented, and then it was decided that we would put it on the agenda to discuss this week. I think that's clear.
So
you don't want to answer my question.
So
I asked you if you felt the same way last week that you feel tonight.
There's not a motion on the floor, and I don't think there's any more information that needs to be gathered. But if there is no other motion, and I'm looking around and I don't see any, then I'm going to call that the end of the debate on that. So council, we are at round table, but I did know there was a late entry to the council chambers. Sir, you said you did want to address an item that was not on the agenda.
Yes. I brought some help. I brought beer. I need help here. My name is Pyotr Zakowski. ZAKJAWSKI I've changed my name since I've last seen you. I'm disappointed there hasn't been any. The name of Spalding High School, the Crimson Tide, hasn't been changed yet. Problem I had going into Gusto's in another bar is my bike. yesterday. Augusta's is owned by Joshua Dickerson. They would, I don't have a girlfriend, I'm 67 years old, never had a girlfriend. Shy. They told me I could not speak to the women and asked them if they were married or not, 60-year-old women. So I asked that you do something about that if you can in your power.
So I don't know if there's anything that we can look into that issue. Our manager, Steve McKenzie, he's on the screen right now, but he's here.
Yes, because I think something should be done because we should have free speech. Don't we?
Since it's a private establishment, I don't know all the details there.
Yeah.
So I would be able to.
I just think we should have free speech and people should be allowed to speak there, even though it's a private establishment. And the other thing, and the flag thing, I don't even see why we have to fly flags downtown. I mean, people are patriotic without flags. I'm patriotic, I don't need a flag. I don't need this to be patriotic. And I definitely agree with not having that large flag. And the last thing is, there was a man hit in the Price Chopper parking lot today. One 80-year-old woman backed up and hit him, knocked him down. He's going to be out for 8 weeks with his arm. She drove away. There's no cameras there. I know this is going to cost a lot of money, but could you look into having cameras in the parking lots in Barre?
So did you say in Price Chopper?
Yes.
Okay, so in Montpelier?
In
Or
Barre, in
Berlin?
Berlin.
Yeah.
So I know it would cost a heck of a lot of money to put poles up. But could you look into seeing having some kind of, maybe just small poles or something for cameras for our parking, so if anybody does get hit, we can go after them. Okay?
We'll note that too. There are differences between private lots and public lots too. So we'd have to address those.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I'm Polish, I'm Ukrainian, like Councilman Wazazak, I guess. I didn't say that. I'm going to Poland on Friday, and I'm sort of cracking up. So that's that about it. Yes, I'm doing Friday, and I'm going to be there a week, and taking pictures, and I got an agenda to see all whole country, and I guess I'll take my little figures and my camera, and that's about it for me for tonight. So thank you, Emma. You're great. This country's great. And sorry what happened in Afghanistan. I'm against President Biden not supporting the troops and Congressman Walsh. And that's about all I have to say for tonight. So thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. So council, we are at roundtable. Councilor, you want to start us off? Councilor?
I would just like to thank Councilor Shambell for being more elegant and eloquent and succinct than I could ever dream about that.
Councilor?
I'll pass. I would like to second what you. So, being so eloquent and saying what we're all thinking. I'll pass.
Councilor Booten? Is there anything you want to add?
Pass.
Okay. So this is going to conclude our regular session portion. We will go into executive session and discuss the appointments from earlier tonight and what we heard from last week. We would come back into regular session afterward in order to announce those appointments. So I just want to make sure everybody was clear about that before we do go into executive session. So with that, I will look for a motion for.
Before the city manager.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Steve Shellhammer for sitting in on the PVR session as well as the council meeting. And again, look forward to his arrival in beginning of October.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to getting there and working with everyone.
So we hope that you found that grand list workshop festival too.
Yeah. Very, very useful. Lots of questions, but very useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night, Steve.
Good night.
Then now I'll look for the motion for going into executive session for personnel. This would be the findings motion.
So.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. And opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go into executive session, and I do not believe we need anyone else other than council. So moved. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, nay. Okay, we'll be in executive session in about 2 minutes.
Well done. Paused.
Hey, wait, of course.
Tammy, could you just close the door behind you?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
I can't hear anything,
I
just
just
so you guys
realized,
know.
my fault, Michael, I apologize. I forgot to hit the button.
So we had a motion and a second by email and Erica to come out of executive session at 8:11 PM. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. Thank you. And now we're in regular session. As we noted earlier in the meeting, we'll make the appointments for the manager search committee and for the homelessness task force. Is there any motions to present?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to appoint Paul Cook, Amanda Guston, Rich Morey, Tracy Lewis, Jake Hemrick, Michael Sitten, and Sue Higbee to the city manager search committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yep. I fully disagree with this. I think that I feel that it's inappropriate for us not to appoint Tom. He's lived in the city all his life. He has business here. He invests a lot of money in the city. He's been through the management search committee before, and he was a mayor in the city for 12 years and has served on school board. And I feel that it's wildly inappropriate not to have him on there with his credentials. And I will be voting no on this.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, you can keep the door open. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay.
Nay.
Vote my nay as well. And then we'll look for a motion for the appointment for the homelessness task force. So, Sam, I'll look to you maybe to make that motion.
I move that we appoint the 5 candidates that have applied, which is Brooke, Julio, and Erica Real, Tammy
Menard,
Kelly.
Carrie Kelly.
Ours first.
Carrie Kelly. Teddy Boston.
Okay, so is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded for the appointments of Brooke Pouliot, Tammy Menard, Carrie Kelly, Teddy Wazazak, and Erica Real to the homelessness task force. This would have 5 of the 7 seats filled, and we noted that we will have the second round of appointments on October 12th for those to fill that, those other 2 seats. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Okay, thank you very much. I don't think there's any more business, so then we look for a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you.